All right, let's get started. Welcome, everyone. Once again, we are here for our lunchtime webinar, so thank you for joining us. Here we have Colleen Lewis, CEO of LWI Lindora, and myself. I am the Chief Medical Officer for the company. Just as a reminder, we are keeping it as a casual conversation. So instead of me lecturing at you, I'm going to invite everyone to sort of chime in, especially with Colleen right next to me. We're having computer issues, so now we're being super close and cozy here. And of course, if you have any questions, we do have Monica in the background that's monitoring all questions coming in. Love to have a conversation and keep it super casual and have a conversation. So today's topic is on self-care, self-care 101, what you can do to start thinking about the idea of self-care. And the fact is, we have been hearing this terminology a lot in the industry, especially in metabolic health and not just in weight management. In this space of what we do for a living, basically helping people live a healthier life with many different modalities and regimens, it really comes down to this idea of thinking about what self-care is about. This is just a literally Wikipedia online definition of self-care. And I feel like everyone could pretty much have their own idea of what it all means. But if you just read, one of these four specific meaning, it's very straightforward. Basically, is to practice some sort of practice and idea of implementing some kind of service and whatnot to really truly optimize your health in one way or the other. And I really like this number 3 as well, this practice of this active role in protecting one's well-being to really induce happiness and just make yourself feel better about you. And it's about you, really. So Colleen, tell me, what do you do when it comes to the idea of self-care?
Wow. Okay. Loaded question. I have a lot of rituals that I follow. From a health perspective, I've been on my own journey over the last year and a half since I've joined Lindora. When I first started, I was 70 pounds heavier. And so I am a client of Lindora as well as an executive of Lindora. And, for me, it's really been a focus on behaviors and losing this weight for the last time in my life because I've gained it and lost it one other time. And so now I'm really focused on what are the behaviors. It's not about revolutionary ideas for me, but it really comes down to consistency. What am I eating with consistency? If I have an off day, how quickly can I get right back on? What supplements am I taking? And now I'm very, very focused and religious about the supplements that I'm taking. Something else that I've started in the last year and a half is hormone replacement therapy. So I'm a 57-year-old woman, and to be able to be as vibrant and to feel as great as I can, to have my estrogen and my progesterone and my testosterone fully balanced has been a game changer for me. And on the other side, on more of an aesthetic side, I am very focused on using great skincare, never going to sleep with makeup on, always washing and actually double cleansing at the end of the day, and just using great products because, look, I have a little bit of vanity in me and I want to look my best, but I also want to feel my best. And so being focused on a monthly facial as an example, or an every other month facial, just small rituals that for me are part of my self-care journey.
Perfect. And you touched on some of the things that I will be talking about in this conversation today. So I'm glad that you actually kind of brought it to light. And so let's keep going. Now, if you actually Google the idea of self-care online, there are many different definitions or meanings. And these are actually some of the more common ways of thinking about self-care. And I see that a lot of these types of agency or folks or specialists or the industry basically have put them or placed them into bullet points or buckets. What to think about when it comes to self-care, because there's a lot of things, and if we can start off with the 7 pillars to self-care, these are just deep beliefs, right? It could be emotional, it could be mental, it could be the, the people and the things around you. It could be your lifestyle in general, or something that's more spiritual. But it could be anything really. But it could be also very overwhelming. When I came through these 7 pillars, I was thinking, oh my gosh, what am I not doing as of this point? Should I be hitting every bullet to be this perfect human being? Or what are some of the things that actually speak out to you? Now, here are right under the 7 pillars are the 5 points, which is a little bit more consolidated. But in our reality, I like these 5 points because it talks about the big kind of bucket items like your exercise, meditation, mindfulness, diet, things that we do to lose weight, and of course, sleep. And we'll touch a little bit on sleep as well. Super important. Or you can think of it as the golden rules, right? I can implement self-care in my life, but let's not allow it to become another form of stress.
Right.
So self-care is a lifestyle. I mean, every day could be fluid. It doesn't have to be a static set of rules that you must follow or abide by. Some days you'll be better, some days you're not. But the fact is, it's something that you want to be mindful about on a daily basis, but not hold it against yourself if you don't fulfill it.
I always say, I have to give myself grace.
Exactly. Exactly. And there's so many things that we can do on a daily basis, but let's face it, there are times when we allow ourselves to have that extra whatever that may not fall under, the idea of self-care. But don't beat yourself too much about that. So what can we do? And what can self-care really do for us? I think that's really some of the reasons on why people say, hey, well, why are we doing what we're doing? Just like weight management. Why am I losing 30 pounds? Is it for vanity or is it purely for metabolic health and longevity, right? So it has to be meaningful for you as an individual. These are some of the common reasons, if you actually kind of dug deep into why people even do self-care or implement self-care into their lives. Really, ultimately, I think the biggest things or biggest reasons comes down to this whole idea of mental health and anxiety. You're the person living in your brain, and these are the things that's causing you to do things on a daily basis. So the question is, where is your baseline? Where do you want to be, every day when you wake up? How are you going to be the best version of yourself and do at least 1% better or perform 1% better in everything that you do? Are you a positive person or are you just a walking around mopey dopey negative Natalie? I don't know. So the question really comes down to what you want to be yourself on a daily basis. Now, reducing anxiety and depression is something that's close to really my career because a lot of times, a lot of our clients in our business actually have underlying anxiety and depression that have put them into this position or place where they gain 30 to 50 pounds for whatever reason. So for us, it's really understanding how to fix or at least trigger and talk about the foundation before we start implementing all the treatment. Reducing stress is it's very common. Obviously, we talk about stress all the time, but did you know stress also relates to the idea of physical inflammation? We actually can measure that, and I'll talk a little bit about that. Improvement of happiness in general. A lot of times we're like, you can't buy happiness. Even if you have all the money in the world, that does not translate to happiness. To me, it's more like contentment. Are you content with the status quo? Because you could be happy today and you can be pissed off tomorrow. So it's all about this level of feeling of just feeling comfortable and content with your situation.
Amy, one thing that I didn't add when I was talking about my self-care journey, but one of the things that I do every single night is I focus on 5 things that happened in my day that I'm really grateful for. And I make my husband do it with me as well. It's like one of the last things we do before we go to sleep. And we both say things that we're grateful for. Sometimes there's an overlap and sometimes there's not. But it's sort of the last thoughts that I have in my head is this sense of, wow, these 5 amazing things or good things or things that are maybe neutral, but I'm happy and I'm grateful that they happened. And that's made a huge difference for me just from a general outlook on life perspective.
Oh, I love that. I mean, these are the simple little things as more of a reminder and self-awareness. I think if you can do it every day or most days of the week, it really does add on to kind of like your meaning, the meaning of life, really. And that's our number 8 too, the sense of purpose and control. I think in today's day and age, we feel like we're losing control because a lot of things are happening, especially with the, with technology. For example, I don't know about you, but I do I troll on social at least an hour before bed. it's probably killing my brain slowly. But at the same time, it's also my attempt to kind of shut down all the stuff that I've gone through in the day with my mindlessness and just trolling on social. So I give myself reasons of why I stay on TikTok or Instagram for an hour before bed. But for me, it's meaningful in that sense and it serves that purpose. And of course, longevity and anti-aging is really the key element here as well. What can you do today to better yourself for tomorrow and to really live this quality of life, not just quantity? Because truly, if you live 20 more years, but it's 20 years of crappy life, what's the whole point, right? So these are some of the kind of added terminology to these kind of like big subjective words. And for me, for you to think about, everything in orange here, basically it's just a level deeper into what we want to think about. Despair for anxiety and depression is actually a real medical condition. During COVID, I think one of the groups that have the highest prevalence of like suicide or deaths are those that feel lonely and not have anyone around them or support, especially for the fact that you watch everyone kind of dying left and right because of the illness of COVID, but yet they have no one to really turn to. And those are the times where the disease itself added more loneliness to those who are already kind of lonely and in despair as it is. So these are some of the things that you want to think about. I mean, obviously this webinar is not supposed to depress you in any way or form. Other things such as your cortisol level for stress management is a real thing. Like physically, we can measure cortisol. Physically, we can measure inflammatory markers. These are all great tools for us to tease out on your normal everyday to really dig deep to address the core issue at hand. I talked about contentment and happiness. Sometimes it's not about happiness. It's really about the contentment and just being satisfied with your status quo. With energy, it's not about just jumping up and down and having energy, but also the motivation to do things. That requires energy. And a lot of times in our weight loss business that we operate here, motivation is key to success. If you're not motivated, I can't even drag you out of the house, even if I wanted to. Next is reduce burnout, which is something that we see all the time. I mean, we are executives in the corporate setting, and oftentimes we are bombarded with all high level, top of the totem pole problems that everyone else is facing, right? And so, but I really truly want to find enjoyment in what I do on a daily basis, even coming to work, seeing beautiful faces like Colleen's. Those add on to the little things in my day that makes me feel like this is worth what I'm doing and why I'm doing what I'm doing. So these are just a little trigger words for you to think about. But otherwise, like I say, longevity, it's all about quality of life. Sometimes, living a longer, crappier life doesn't mean anything, but really hone in on the great little things, like even the little bedtime right before Colleen goes to bed, her and her husband talks about how grateful they are for the various things in their lives. These are the meaningful things that some people should approach and think about. And of course, sense of purpose and the meaning of everything, right? So these are some of the terminologies and the benefits of self-care in general. Pick up whichever one that speaks to you, because we're going to move on to some of the things that we should be thinking about on how to activate these things. But before we go on, let's just define stress. Stress really is the evolving word or term that really comes down to why we want to even implement self-care. And the fact is, stress can be mental or emotional, and it could be physical. But the fact is, it happens every day. Some people can tolerate a lot of stress and some people don't. And so I would say Colleen and I, we're probably very resistant to stress in general because we manage stress at a high level all the time. If we didn't, then we both would have had acid reflux or at least have an ulcer burnt in our stomach. But we talk about it all the time because a lot of things that we have experienced, and I'm 46 years old, right? And she's 57. It means like majority of our lives, we have been so used to the whole level of stress.
I say, like for me, I have a high tolerance for it.
Yeah.
It takes so much to push me over the edge. Not that I don't sometimes get pushed over the edge, I do, but it's very infrequently. I can tolerate a huge amount of
Yes.
stress in my life.
Yes, and how you manage it, I think becomes the key element in how we perceive stress as well. Stress, of course, can be good and bad, but the fact is there are good stress as well. Now, this slide here is kind of a fun slide that I found online, which is put out by the American Psychological Association. Basically, they took a survey of a lot of adults in the US and US American adults, and basically kind of put them into buckets of age ranges and also the types of stress and how they perceive stress. And we know that in the US, as 2023, most of the people who are dealing with a lot more stress really comes down to the age group between 18 to 34. Okay. And then it starts kind of decreasing in prevalence as they grow older. And I would say this is probably contributed by the fact that wisdom and knowledge probably plays a huge role here, right? And I could imagine an 18-year-old going through life and maybe having a little money, renting an apartment, trying to find a job, is very impactful, or at least can induce a lot more emotions versus, a 45-year-old who has a job, who lives in the house and whatnot. So I do contribute the age factor to probably be the reason of why someone would subjectively claim that they have a lot more stress than other age groups. What would you add to this on this slide? What do you see here? Some of the patterns here.
I mean, I think it's fascinating. Just time on planet Earth helps you to manage your stress better, right? Because as you get older, your stress level goes down. But seeing this slide for the first time, Dr. Lee, the one thing that I took a pause at is I have two children. They're 24 and 27, and they both live in New York City, and they have active and somewhat stressful career paths that they've chosen. And this gives me a moment to pause to really make sure I'm checking in with them. They're actually, both my daughter and my son are vocal about their own mental health. Which I appreciate, because when I see this first one that says 71% don't even want to talk about it, I guess one of the things I'm going to be grateful for tonight after seeing this slide is that my daughter specifically, as well as my son, they'll talk to me about what's causing them anxiety and stress in their life. Sometimes they just want me to listen and not be a problem solver for them. But I think it's really interesting to look at the way that this is categorized and the different buckets that cause stress and at what level. And I love having this awareness for myself, for my peer group, for my family, and for my friends.
Yep. Oh, that's great. It's a perfect example, and different generation too.
Yes.
I think some generations really rather not talk about it. And truly, just looking back, I feel like the older generation probably don't want to open up the whole idea of them being stressed.
Yeah.
And
It's
nowadays,
like soldier on, be a good soldier,
Exactly.
get to it.
Exactly. But nowadays, I feel like the at least public health is more aware of this whole idea that people are stressed, and it's very impactful in everyday life. Also, the way we perform at work and whatnot. So it is being addressed much more readily than compared before. Now, here's another slide on why people don't seek help for therapy. And I'm going to admit, I have a therapist. I have a therapist ever since, I don't know, late 20s. And I'm a true believer of talk therapy, because oftentimes, if you agree or disagree with me, your friends are the worst therapists. They agree with you on everything, even though you're wrong. You go to see that one best friend who's going to tell you everything you want to hear. It doesn't add on to your well-being overall, because of the fact that they're not helping you solve problems, right? They're just making you feel better at the moment of. I do recommend therapy and talk therapy for a lot of my clients in weight loss business, because of the fact, like I said before, I would say 70% of our patient population at Lundora do have underlying mental health conditions. It could be anxiety, it could be bipolar, it could be depression, whatever it is. It really is the kind of cause to everything else downstream. And truly, I also believe that you don't have to have a problem to seek help, by the way. I go talk to my therapist once a month, and I see her kind of like a life coach almost, kind of just tell me, hey, are you okay, on everything that you're doing now. And I feel like a lot of executives actually do leverage the use of life coach, career coaches, and tell you the truth, those are a form of therapy for us. And so I do embrace it. And by the way, your insurance pays for this. So all you got to do is call your insurance company up and say, look, who's in my network? Let's set up an appointment, and maybe you have a copay of $20. But in general, this is probably the best thing you can do for yourself, is to have someone sit down with you, third party, total stranger, to just go through your day or talk about all the things that are happening in your life, and use it kind of like a upkeep, or just bringing self-awareness.
Keeping your mental psyche tuned up is what I call it.
Exactly. And so hopefully that could be someone's implementation of self-care today. Now, this slide is just a little synopsis of what, kind of sources of stress that people deal with. They're very common. I think most of you may agree with me on what's considered to be like real bad stress versus, maybe a little bit of stress. But I think every day we do go through the daily hassles on the right column here of things that we do kind of encounter, which is consistent, right? Just, projects that you have to meet the deadlines of, running errands, making sure your kids are, at the right places, and being over and triaging issues, and of course, troubleshooting, of course. Otherwise, the life events are the big things, right? Death of the family, someone is sick, or being fired, which would impact you financially. But look at all these bullet points. I would think that most people in the audience would probably could relate to half of these things on the list. So the question is, are you capable of managing the feelings of stress that results from these events on a daily basis? But this is just a little quick list, but otherwise I do want to bring awareness to the idea that we do need stress. So don't be anti-stress, because I think we need stress physiologically to survive. And also our bodies are actually made with organs that help us survive through stress, and stress actually makes us grow. And so something to think about really is, well, when does a good stress become a bad stress? And really the key element here is time and duration. If a quick little stress comes and goes and you can resolve it quickly, that's actually good stress. We do need deadlines in life. We do need to be told like, hey, this is due and we must accomplish it, because accomplishing it is actually a very great positive reinforcement in most people's lives, because there's usually outcome and success that comes with it. But when a ongoing stress becomes too long in duration, then in our bodies, it could actually convert to what we call bad or chronic stress. And this actually could be measured. In our business, because we do address the idea of weight management as well as metabolic health, inflammatory markers and the idea of inflammation in general is very important to us. This is literally the one biomarker that really helps us start conversations. We first clinically talk to the patient or client on their everyday life, and then objectively, we could measure exactly what level of inflammation that we could actually help this client deal with. So inflammation itself is a component to stress. It is what we look at inflammation as the body's response to some kind of injury or damage that's happening physically. But you don't have to have an open wound or open cut to say, all right, you got inflammation. Inflammation could also be, the physical inflammation could be induced by psychological stress. So if you're sad or anxious and you're just not feeling right, your body could actually be triggered to make certain biomarkers known as the CRP. So hsCRP stands for high sensitivity CRP, or C-reactive protein. We measure it in our labs because that's part of the conversation with our clients who comes in overweight and or obese. We also know that being overweight and or obese actually elevates your inflammatory markers. So we want to make sure that everyone has a baseline to work with. So then after, 20, 30, 40 pounds of weight loss, then the post-test could actually help the client kind of acclimate to the fact that, wow, they're doing something physically that's beneficial. So this is a marker of what we call a pathophysiological process, super important. And if you never had it done before, this is something that pretty standard. Your primary care physician could actually add that on to your physical exam as well, but we do it as a standard blood work. Anything to add on this? I don't think you ever measured your
I
CRP.
have, it's so funny that you say it. So when I first started with the business and became a client, I had all of the regular blood work done. And it's interesting when you think about the tolerance for stress, right? So I was 70 pounds heavier. My biomarker was at the high level of normal. And on my most recent blood work, I'm at the low level of normal
That's awesome.
for inflammation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another fun fact, this biomarker is actually made from your liver as well as from adipose tissue. Adipose tissue is your fat cells. So if you have a lot of belly fat or a lot of fat in general, you basically are secreting more of this protein into your bloodstream, which is measurable. So once you lose, 30, 40, 50 pounds, therefore you're shrinking down these fat cells and you're no longer making it. So
Yeah.
Conditions that can increase your inflammation, it's everything. Anything that is obviously not health related, especially cardiovascular disease. So for example, if you are hypertensive or you have what we call dyslipidemia, which is abnormal cholesterol levels, you could actually increase your inflammatory markers as well. Other things would be autoimmune conditions, kind of like lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, colitis, Crohn's. Those are very inflammatory conditions as well. If you have chronic pain, lower back pain, hip pain, knee pain, that actually forces your body to make a bunch of these biomarkers too, because pain receptors are being activated and your muscles are actually irritated due to the dysfunction or imbalance of your pain receptors as well. So lots of things could do that. Now, what's interesting is during COVID, during pandemic, what I noticed was every time someone got their vaccines, they come in, the CRP goes up. So is that a bad thing or a good thing? What do you think?
I'm gonna say a good thing.
Well,
Pure guess.
why are everyone's CRP elevated after a vaccine?
I mean, I'm twisted in my brain. I'm like, I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but maybe it's a bad thing. I don't know. Amy, tell me.
It's
a neutral
it's
thing.
very interesting. It's very interesting. So if you did walk in with COVID and I measured your CRP, your CRP will be up because this virus is actually causing your body to go into its immunity kind of burst, right? So your immune system is revved up. You're making all kinds of cells to fight off the virus. Versus a vaccine, the vaccine is just pieces of your COVID virus, right? And it also triggers your immune system to act as if you got COVID so you can build a response to the actual virus. And so it just means that, look, your inflammatory system, your immunity is actually working really well, and it's seeing what is coming in as foreign body, but ultimately it's the same pathway that your body is kind of going through. To me, it's just an interesting fun fact. It doesn't mean that COVID causes your inflammatory markers to go up for a bad reason. It just means your immune system actually works really well, and we can pick it up from a simple protein called CRP. So like anything could increase it. So sometimes you can even measure this CRP with a healthy individual and get an elevated number. Now, I don't want you to go like fire drill, chase after a disease that you don't know you may have or may not have. It's a very generic marker. Just because it's high doesn't mean you are going to have some kind of disease state. But it is a nice little warning bell to say, hey, you know what? Maybe we should look deeper into all your systems and do your physical exam and whatnot. This is why your annual physical exam is super important, because this is our chance as a physician to really just pick up things that you may not be aware is happening behind the scene. But there's something you can definitely ask your primary to add on to your labs as well. All right, so we talked a lot about the idea of self-care. So how do we even get started? Just like a diet, you got to sit down and just think about what's important to you. If you're not ready to sit down and do this, then you're not ready. But at least you kind of have some directions here. I usually tell my clients when they're ready to start a journey or initiate some kind of new habitual change, sit down and observe, look around you, even just take a day today and just look around. All right, what are the things that triggers me? What some of the things that like puts me in a very stressful mode and whatnot. What am I happy with or content with right now? What am I not content with today? Write down a whole list and just kind of vomit onto a piece of paper of all the words that come to your brain and write it all down, because you're not going to address everything 100%, but it would be nice for you to have the opportunity to target the big items, right? And so this goes along with implementing what we call self-care. It could be weight management. It could be whatever you want, but use your time to just sit down and pick out all the words. And then you start incorporating the big items, just one at a time. Don't overwhelm yourself. We talked about emotional, mental, spiritual, environmental. Let's just say you want to just work on the environmental. Okay, you know that there's air pollution all around you. Perhaps you don't want to drive as much as you used to. Just target one thing at a time. And of course, ultimately, you'll get to the point where if you can't figure it out yourself, but it is a problem, get professional help, just like the therapist, and just call your insurance company to see what is available to you. All right, things to think about. Little transition slide here. Now, we do weight management here. This is our specialty at Lindora. So I like to at least be a little biased and focus on the idea of how stress causes health, despair, and negativity to your life. Being stressed in your normal everyday actually does make a huge physical impact in your health. And here's how. A stressful person oftentimes have higher levels of cortisol. Cortisol is a hormone, stress hormone, that is made by this adrenal gland that you see here on the picture. The adrenal glands are tiny. It sits right on top of your kidneys. And besides making cortisol, it also makes something called epinephrine and norepinephrine. These are your what we call sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system hormones that helps us wake up every morning and puts us to sleep every night. They're super important, and I would say without this gland, you would be dead. You cannot survive without this gland, but it's so tiny, but it does so much work when it comes to our tolerance to stress, the fight and flight response that we do every day, like the hunting and gathering kind of instinct that we have. And so it's super important to understand what's cortisol doing for us. Too little of it actually is dangerous. Too much of it is also dangerous. So you have to have this like nice balance somewhere in between. Now, we don't measure cortisol as a standard practice in medicine because sometimes in the morning, you're going to peak and you're going to be super high. And at night, you're going to be on the lower end. And then you spike up and down during your sleep. So we don't chase after the cortisol overall. However, if you are in balance, we know it because you'll come in with symptoms of fatigue, weird hair growth, abdominal belly fat, just in general depressed, or some people get kind of bipolarish and frantic and manic. So it's super important to understand that cortisol plays a huge role in the way we feel on a daily basis. And this slide here, the effects of high cortisol, you can see it's all over map. I mean, it could be everything and anything. So even with cravings in our business, cravings, motivation, abnormal weight gain falls right under the category of imbalanced cortisol. So what if you have an inkling or a feeling that maybe perhaps you're highly stressed and it's causing you to really not enjoy your life and you really want to take the first step in doing something about it, here's my simple approach. Talking to enough clients in my lifetime, in my career, take it easy. Just think easy little steps, simple approach. Step one, measure your baseline inflammatory marker, the CRP. Do it before and then do it after. Implement some kind of treatment plan and then do it after. Prove to yourself objectively that you are taking control and actually being able to do something when it comes to kind of the before and after of this inflammatory state. Item number 2 here is super easy. Look in your day of all the stuff that you eat, that you consume on a daily basis, or things that you drink as well. Take out all the ultra processed food items or ingredients that may be something that's in your food source. Because a lot of times, these are the things that's causing a lot of inflammation in your body and putting you in a state of inflammation all the time at a high level. Simply cutting out processed foods that have a lot of added colors, artificial flavors, and even preservatives could literally help you lose probably 3 to 4 pounds up front. And here's why. A lot of these artificial flavors and seasonings and preservatives are not recognized by the body. So what we do is our immune system gets revved up and then we keep water and basically cause water retention. Oftentimes we feel swollen when we eat a lot of processed foods because of this very reason. So when we teach our clients to cut that all out and transition over to fresh fruits and vegetables and lean proteins, the first thing that they drop is a lot of water weight. This is the body's way of saying, We're now cleansing from all the stuff that we've been holding on from all the ultra processed foods that you've been eating. This is the quick way to lose 3 to 5 pounds, to tell you the truth. And of course, focus on the fresh fruits and vegetables and the lean proteins. Not all proteins are created equal either. So if you're going out to get that ribeye, that's very different from the seafood and the lean proteins like chicken and pork loin and whatever else. So you do have to think about that, but at least try transitioning slowly and don't overwhelm yourself. Any comments on this? I think you have implemented this.
I have
Quite a bit.
implemented it. As a matter of fact, I basically don't eat any processed foods any longer. And mostly I eat at home, like we cook at home, because even when you go to a nice restaurant, you're not 100% aware of what all of the ingredients are. But I have to say, I love a good ribeye. So, but I'm very mindful of how frequently I'm eating it now.
Exactly.
Yes, so I'm actually doing all of these things.
Yeah, ribeye, nothing wrong with it. We actually, in our bodies, we do need saturated fats, which is mostly in your ribeye versus, like a filet mignon. And of course, it's tastier because
Yeah.
of the amount of fat. But once in a while, it's totally fine. I think the current recommendation when it comes to intake of saturated fats from animal products like ribeye, butter, and whatnot, it's about 1 serving, 2 servings a week
Oh,
at most.
I'm good. I'm
Yeah.
really good.
And I know you're a picky eater. She
You
doesn't
know,
eat that much.
I am a picky eater, and the hardest one on this list for me was number 2, to take out ultra processed foods, right? Because I travel a lot, I'm on the road, it's easy to grab something and go. Also, personally, I have a sugar addiction. So ultra processed foods really fed my sugar
Mhm.
addiction. And that was the hardest one for me to ultimately break.
Yep.
Yeah. And I'm never going back to it.
Hey, and thank you for being super self-aware, because a lot of people don't even know that fact.
Man.
They go through every day just kind of doing the same routine on a daily basis. But in reality, sometimes you just pick out these things and you realize, you look back and oh my gosh, it's a lot of, we used to joke around. I used to put these little like Oreo cakesters on her desk just to tease her, because that's her like go-to back in the day. I'm like, what are these things? It's packed with sugar. But it's an office joke that we have.
It's a little office joke. They make fun of me. I like Oreo cookies. And one time I saw this, it almost looks like a little whoopie pie, but they call it an Oreo cakester. And I was being so good. And my husband and I were traveling. We were at the airport. We hadn't eaten in like 24 hours. We were starving. He, of course, got nuts. And I was like, I'm having those Oreo cakesters. And he said, I'm sending a photo of you to Dr. Amy of you with these cakesters, which he did, which is now you're all in on the inside joke of The Office.
Yep.
I had a breakdown and I ate some cakesters in the airport.
But that was the loss, I think. So.
Yeah, that is a fact. They shamed the Oreos out of
We
me.
did. We totally did. All right. So movement and stress, it's a real thing. Like the more you move, the less stress you live with. And so there are many clinical trials out there. I'm not going to bore you with all the details of that. But the fact is, fun fact, did you know that 68.9 million people or adult US Americans have a gym membership? And this is from 2023 data, post-pandemic, because there was a lot of disruption with the gym industry. But 68 million, that's kind of 1/5 of the US adult population, because there's 350 million people in the US. But the question is, do you guys have a gym membership? And the next question is, do you use it?
Exactly. I'm the guilty one. I don't go.
Amy, we have a question from Jacqueline, which is, I guess, somewhat related to movement. She says, I just started tirzepatide and notice it's harder to make it through a workout. Are there additional supplements I can be taking for that? Or will it wear off?
Jacqueline, that's a great question. I will actually cover that in our next couple of slides. And congratulations on being on tirzepatide, because that's also a form of self-care.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you're aware, you want to do something about it, and here we are. And so, yeah, so there's a lot of people with gym memberships. Question is, do they use it? And there is a cohort of those of the 68 million that loves paying for the membership, but won't go to the gym. And those are the people that I love to really understand, like, what's your motivator? Like every month that you look at your credit card and every month that same amount of money gets taken out for your membership, but yet you won't go and you won't cancel. That's the fun, like, psychological impact on that. This slide here is just a fun, busy slide that tells me, hey, look, guess what? Walking, jogging, yoga is as good as talk therapy when it comes to mental health and addressing like depression or anxiety on a daily basis. Don't need to understand everything about this, but this is basically a meta-analysis of a study where they accumulate a bunch of other studies, like over 200 different studies, and they just looked at all the commonalities of what you can do to help with the symptoms of anxiety and depression. So it's super powerful if you think about it. Just the little things that you can do on a daily basis could actually make a huge impact on your mental health. You may or may not be ready to like move on to this next step in your kind of lifestyle, but it's something to think about to know that, hey, look, there are gyms everywhere. I'm likely a member. Maybe next Monday, I'll sign up for a class or yoga class for beginners, for example. Just taking that first step, I think, is super important. There are recommendations on movement and exercise. Oftentimes we get asked that in our business because truly a lot of our clients are very sedentary to begin with, and they're not used to the idea of moving. We're not a CrossFit gym. We are not a yoga studio. However, we do have those conversations and we embrace the idea of starting something, if not on something already. But the recommendation really comes down to this. For overall wellness and just health in general, we have to move our bodies at least 150 to 250 minutes per week. And we're not talking about, walking a 1 mile per hour speed on a treadmill. We're talking about something moderate in nature, meaning you're going to break out in some form of sweat, just a light sweat, just a little sweat on your nose. You got to get your heart pumping just at least 10% more than what it is at baseline. Why? Because you're trying to make your body work and metabolize for you. There are medications out there that boost your metabolism, but guess what? This is free. This is all free. You can literally implement a 30-minute, 40-minute walk on a daily basis while you're at work. And I think most of you are probably, during your lunch hour, for example, instead of eating, sitting down for an hour to eat, maybe perhaps you can implement a half an hour of that for just purely movement. These are little things that you can do on a daily basis. We harp on it with our patients. Sometimes it's just hard to get there, but once you start, I do guarantee you, the benefit of the positive reinforcement will always outweigh the stress of having to get started. And I have not met anyone who regret a exercise, session.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say not always. I often am like, oh, I dread it. And then I try to flip my script and say, oh, lucky me, I get to do this.
Yes.
I get to do this. And every time after a workout session, I always feel better. Those endorphins are firing and I feel better and I'm glad that I did it. So now I just have to get myself to the place where I'm excited to do it. I'm not yet excited. Maybe some of you are. I'm not yet excited.
You don't have to be excited. It's one of those things where if you are losing a lot of weight, you're going to have to think about what you can do physically to kind of maintain that muscle mass too. Because as we grow older, we do end up just naturally losing more muscles. That's just the trajectory of just growing old and aging. So if you care enough, there are ways to actually maintain that. And this is very minimal. This is like your sports medicine recommendation on everyday health and wellness. Now, if you really want to lose weight and maintain weight loss and preserve muscle mass every decade of your life, we're talking about 400 plus minutes per week. And that number actually came out recently off a research paper. I forget the name of the agency, but you can probably Google it. Really, it's 400 plus minutes. Now, let's just not try to be like, type A and do everything all at once. So this is why 150 minutes per week is very doable, right? But you gotta start somewhere. So how do you optimize everything else? You're eating better, you're doing the exercise. What else can you do? So supplementation is key. And I think this could answer Jacqueline's question. Being on GLP-1s, which most people are, GLP-1s are basically the active ingredient or the active hormone known as Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, and Zepbound. The active ingredients can also be acquired by compounded versions as well versus the brand name, but a lot of people now in the industry are on it in one way or the other. So with that, Jacqueline asked a really good question, and these are some of the questions that we get to in our business now. We have lost the weight, we are on GLP-1s, but yet we're just kind of tired now compared to before when it comes to finishing a workout. And why is that? Now, the mechanism of action of these GLP-1s, number one, is to tell your brain that you're no longer having cravings for those certain foods that got you in trouble in the first place. You're also no longer eating the amount that you were eating before because it suppresses your appetite and it keeps you fuller longer. So people are finishing their meals faster and they don't find themselves snacking in between meals. So with that, number one, you're already restricting your calories. So Jacqueline, I would very well take a look at your daily intake. Make sure that you're getting all your macronutrients in, proteins, carbohydrates, and good fats, because you're no longer eating the same amount that you were before. So you're restricting all these macros all upfront because you're on this medication. Obviously, the whole intent is to lose weight by restricting calories, but you want to make sure that you're not restricting all the good calories, right? And the vitamins and minerals that goes along with the macros. Now, the micronutrients are also it's super important when it comes to eating and consumption, because you want to make sure that you're getting all your recommended daily allowance of vitamins and minerals and amino acids. Some of the items here are kind of my quick go-to. There are a lot more, but I wasn't going to overwhelm you with all the things in my brain. But number one, really comes down to glutathione. Glutathione, when it comes to being a super antioxidant, it is the antioxidant of the decade. People use it internally through IV hydration. They can take a pill, but truly, this is also injected as well. Glutathione also plays a huge role in skincare and medical aesthetics. Love it because if you go to a bunch of med spa, I guarantee you'll find glutathione in one way or the other, topicals, injections, IV. So something to think about, have that word kind of in your brain, because when you come across it, you'll realize this is antioxidant, it's anti-aging, and it's anti-inflammatory. B complex, my next item on the list here, is super important because a lot of times when we cut out bread and pasta and all the simple carbs that we are so used to eating, you're also cutting out a lot of B vitamins. B1 and 2 are actually found in our breads. You know, they're fortified in our wheat bread, sourdough, whatever it is. So when you stop eating bread because you're on a ketogenic diet, which most people are, because they're eating just proteins and vegetables, you're basically losing out on your B1 and B2. And when you do lose out and where your levels dip down low enough where it becomes a deficiency, you're going to feel tired and just not right. So Jacqueline, I would make sure that you have a B complex of some sort or a multivitamin that has all these Bs in it. Vitamin C is super important. This is the one, vitamin or known as ascorbic acid that is found in your citrus. So if you're not a citrus eater, you would have to depend on really capturing vitamin C in your other vegetables and meats in general. But if you can put in some form of supplementation of vitamin C, that's also very easy to implement. It's a quick little 500 milligram pill that you can buy really anywhere, and it's easy to take. It hardly has any side effects whatsoever, so I would definitely keep that in mind. Also, vitamin C is a cofactor to make collagen. So if you're into anti-aging skincare and you're pounding yourself with collagen drinks or collagen topicals, guess what? If you don't have vitamin C in your system, they don't cling on each other and they don't make collagen effectively. So something to think about for the vain people in the audience. Turmeric is one of those things where it's popular in Asian cultures, it's in your Indian cooking. People start putting turmeric in their bullet coffee as well. It is an antioxidant, anti-inflammatory. Doesn't hurt if you put like a scoop here and there in all your cooking, but it does have a lot of clinical data on the way it helps you kind of like slow down the damages of your everyday, which is inflammation. I do like turmeric because it doesn't taste like anything. It just has this bright orange color that you can just add on to your dishes, and it's actually healthy for you. ECGC is actually an active phytochemical in green tea. If you guys are the type of person who really likes tea and you drink a little green tea in a tea bag, I would suggest that you go to an Asian market and buy a little 1 ounce jar with the actual green powder, because that's where you're going to get all the active EGCG versus the tea bag. Oftentimes it's diluted with other tea leaves and you're not going to get your money's worth. Also known as an antioxidant, have a lot of clinical data on anti-cancer effects for longevity. So you do have to drink green tea for a long time to get that kind of benefit. So, drinking for a week, it's not going to do you much good, but it's also considered anti-aging. Lots of people, lots of med spas actually utilizes green tea and this active ingredient in their topicals as a way to kind of slow down the process of wrinkles and age spots. And lastly, dihydrocapsate is actually a ingredient derived from a sweet chili pepper ingredient called CH19. I'm going to focus a little bit on this. This is something that we actually have been selling at Lindora for over 10 years because it's, well, first of all, we are the biggest distributor of the West Coast for this very ingredient, and really no one else sells it in the United States except us. So we really like this product for the reason of, number one, it has great human clinical data on the benefits, health benefits of this, utilizing this one ingredient on a daily basis. And Colleen actually is on this from day one of, being employed at the company as well.
Yeah, I love this product. Amy will talk to it more clinically, but I'll just talk to it as a layperson, as a non-medical person. The dosing on the bottle is 3, and what it does is it allows you to burn additional calories from the thermogenic effects. So this says about 50 calories a day. When you take 3, it is the first thing I take every single morning on an empty stomach with a glass of water. And I was in a seminar with Dr. Lee one day, and she was like, look, you could take up to 9 of these a day. And from that moment on, I started taking up to, I take 9 of them a day. And for me, on this self-care journey and on this weight loss journey that I've been on, being able to burn an additional 100 or 200 calories a day by taking this is really meaningful, because I'm already on a caloric restriction in my diet. And so I feel like it's made a huge difference for me.
Yeah, and I think that it's the little things that you do that has this accumulative effect. And on data, clinical data, there are papers out there that have at least shown that when you take this very low dose on a daily basis, you could burn up to 50 calories a day from your resting metabolism. So the fact is, I bumped her up only because I did clinical trials when I was a trainee at UCLA of the same product from the same company, and we were actually dosing people 3 times the effect for, safety studies, basically make sure there's no side effects when you reach up to 3 times the amount, and there wasn't. So this is why, as a friend and colleague who happens to study this supplement, I gave her the okay to bump it up. But otherwise, our standard dosing is 9 milligrams per day. And Colleen's taking 3 times of that. So, but otherwise, all the other things which are great, besides resting metabolism boost and the thermogenic effects of it, are the suppression of what we call age-associated increase in liver inflammation, for example, because you can measure inflammation of the liver via blood work and whatnot, and also its effect on oxidative stress. These are some of the things that's not on our label at our company, because we, obviously we're not selling the condition state of fixing people's livers and inflammation per se. We're using it for weight management. But if you actually Google this active ingredient online, you'll find a lot of published data on all the other things that it actually helps with. So these are exciting things. And also, Jacqueline, FYI, if you are thinking about, powering through and cutting more fat, this is a great product for that. IV hydration is also another way to get all those great supplements and ingredients that I talked about earlier into your body quickly. In our business, we give intramuscular shots of vitamins, and we also give IV hydration, or offer IV hydration via these many different menu items that we have. 2 or 3 of which has the implemented glutathione and, of course, vitamin C. And we have different names for these types of bags, but of course, you can always check us out online. But otherwise, I want to not focus too much on the company from this talk, but for you to really think about how can I find these ingredients? And I know some of you are not from California, so even in your local community, you can find IV hydration businesses, and they would have ingredients listed and written out for you. If you are specifically looking for something to really draw down the everyday inflammation and stress, and that is really your intent for implementing self-care, maybe treat yourself to 1 or 2 of these bags a week for a short time, just to see how you feel. The great thing about IV as a source is that it is 100% bioavailable once you undergo the session, meaning every little molecule that is in that bag is now in your system. And you get to actually all these ingredients would actually go through all the blood cells and all the receptors that, your body is basically seeing all the ingredients at the same time versus it being injected into your muscle or in your fat. It might just sit there for a while and then slowly dissipate. So our clients who love the IV services from us do feel this kind of what we call euphoric high or energy boost right after having these bags for that very reason. And also hydration. Some people just forget that they're just walking around dehydrated all the time. And this is just a quick, easy way to just hydrate your body and just be able to deliver all these great things quickly. Great thing is these ingredients are water soluble, so you would never be at risk for overdosing or get into any toxic levels because of the nature of these water soluble vitamins. Quick little thing on glutathione in itself, you can actually eat glutathione from food sources, but of course, if you're not a big fan of fruits and vegetables and nuts and things that you see here, you can always get it into a supplementation form from IV or IM shot as well. So something to think about. Probiotics is actually one of those very hot topics nowadays too, with gut microbiome and gut health, because it is a reflection of everything you're doing on a daily basis. We know that people who are ill or have overweightness or obesity carry a very different profile of probiotics compared to those who are healthy weight and whatnot. So something to think about is, what can you do on a daily basis to really optimize your gut microbiome. Now, I'm going to quickly go to my food list because this is what I find to be interesting. What you want to do is, we all know that you have probiotics that are lining from your mouth to your anus. There are bacteria everywhere on our bodies. The question is, how can we feed them and optimize them and make sure that they're happy with us? Some of the things that we always talk about is feeding your probiotics. And one of the items here is short chain fatty acids. What are they? They're basically byproduct or fiber byproducts of normal fruits and vegetables that you see here. And I listed some of the more common things. So if you like your bananas and legumes and beans and potatoes, then you're in good hands. But otherwise, how about the fermented foods? We talk about kimchi all the time. Have you had kimchi? Colleen hates kimchi. She hates everything on this list. However, these are the
I like
things.
sourdough bread. I like one item, and I like cheddar cheese. I'm good.
Yeah, so if you just Google fermented foods, it just means fermentation itself. The process causes it to have natural growth of probiotics that you can actually eat and acquire and put it in your system. So these are some of the common things. And I even put in the link for you. There's actually a really nice complete list of fermented foods and what kind of bacteria it actually carries in those specific foods for fun. But the easiest way for healthcare or self-care, and I have 2 minutes left, is sleep. Oh my gosh, I don't even know how to hyper focus on sleep with our clients. People oftentimes dismiss the importance of sleep, but did you know there are actually studies out there, very interesting study. You can sleep 6.5 hours a day and be functional and be fine. But did you know if you actually bump that up by 2 more hours, you could actually expend 270 more calories a day just by simply sleeping 2 hours more.
I like to say sleep is the new luxury. And if it were a drug, it's so powerful, it would be illegal. That's my position on sleep.
Yeah, and for me, it's just like, look, if you want to lose weight effectively and you don't want to retain a bunch of water, sleep. It's free. You just have to make sure you stay in bed and implement good quality sleep. Just because you're in bed for 8 hours and not sleep doesn't mean anything. But the last slide here really is just my attempt to say, look, sleep is, it's a multifactorial, multi-purpose. It's the best thing you're ever going to do because it is when you sleep, when your body actually heals itself and your immune system actually revs up and starts fixing all the damages that you have caused all day long by, being in the environment, being all stressed out and whatnot. And so allow your body to have that luxury to cure, to repair. And truly, it's also great for anti-aging. So that's all I have to share today. That's a lot of information. I feel like sleep should be another hour of our conversation. Monica, back to you.
Next webinar, we'll add on an entire hour on sleep. I love that. Awesome.
All right.
Monica, any last questions in the chat?
Yeah, Angela asked if they can get a copy of the presentation, and this is being recorded, so I'll be uploading it to our YouTube and also emailing it out. So I would say be on the lookout for that. This whole presentation, you're able to watch it again.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.